Baruchim Aboim, B'Shem Irgun Shir Torah, Moses Boston. I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's shir. Those who are participating here in person, upstairs and downstairs, in the Zosnoshim, as well as all those participating in the hookup sites to the Torah Conferencing Network throughout the United States. Whoever did not have the opportunity to participate in our annual dinner last night can still participate. Askarim are here be after the shir. You can always send in your donation to Irgun Shir Torah, 1438 40th Street, or email to tapecenter@yeshivanet.com. That was 1438 40th Street, Brooklyn, New York, 11218, and help Irgun Shir Torah bring these inspiring shiurim to your community throughout the year. There's still sponsorship opportunities available. A few shiurim remaining in this season. Contact one of the Askarim. Give us a call at 718-851-8651. Tonight we have the cover to have with us a new Maggid Shir, Rabbi Ben Zion Schaefer, Rosh Chaburas Tzeras B'nai Torah and founder of the Shmuz, came to speak to us on the very important topic of Shidduchim. We'd also like to remind everyone that Rabbi Schaefer's CDs and Svarim will be available for purchase after the Shir in the men's and the ladies section. It's an excellent opportunity to check it out and get some of the inspiring material. Now it's my cover to call on Rabbi Schaefer for tonight's drasha.
Thank you. You'll adjust? Okay. You'll adjust it as needed. Louder. That's what's going to happen. Can we move it? Could you adjust it a little closer? Oh, I'm sorry. You pick up the audio. You got to remember your job. That's his job. This is my job. Got it. Okay. The topic this evening is finding and keeping your Bashert. And while it may sound like a simple enough concept, I think it actually underscores what it is that we're obligated as Jews to do, not just in this issue, but in general. The whole gamut of what's our part, what's HaKadosh Baruch Hu's part, how much bitachon we're supposed to have, how much ishtadlus. If Hashem runs the world and determines every outcome, what's my role, what's the balance? And what I'd like to do is deal with this topic from exactly that perspective, analyzing first in general terms, what's the right balance that a Jew is supposed to have when he goes out into the world? And let me begin with two apparently contradictory chazals. The Gemara tells us as follows: Mizonosav shel odam ketzuvin lo min Rosh Hashanah. Exactly the amount of money that you are to make this year is set on Rosh Hashanah. Very well known fact. Whether you're going to make $50,000, $500,000, that exact amount of money is set, except for Tzor Shabbos, Yom Tov, and Banav Talmud Torah. Monies that you spend on Shabbos, if you spend more, you'll get more. Monies that you spend on Yom Tov, monies that you spend on your children's Torah education, in those areas alone, if you spend more, you'll get more. In any other area, exactly the amount that's set on Rosh Hashanah is the amount that you'll earn, not a penny more, not a penny less. Let's call that Exhibit 1. The problem is, the Gemara in Bracha seems to contradict that openly. Why? Because the Gemara tells us that Daled Dvarim Tzrichim Chizik. There are four things that a person must constantly be machazik themselves, must constantly give themselves tremendous drive and energy, reinvigorate. What are those four areas? Torah, Tefillah, Maasim Tovim, V'derach Eretz. Torah is rather obvious. It's difficult to see the reward for Limud Torah. Learning is often difficult. Learning is often something that's taxing and demanding. It's not easy to see the great reward, so it's certainly something that requires chizik, certainly something that a person must motivate himself to, certainly something a person must focus on. So the first makes sense. The second in the list is tefillah. Davening also isn't that simple. To recognize that I'm standing in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu right here, that I'm having a conversation with the creator of the heavens and the earth, little me, speaking to HaKadosh Baruch Hu right here, is not so obvious, not so simple. All of my physicality denies it, and therefore it requires chizik. So number two makes sense also. Maasim Tovim means looking for someone else's good, being other-centered, saying to myself, forget my interests, forget my benefits, what could I do for that person? That's also something that's not so natural. So Torah, Tefillah, Maasim Tovim makes sense why a person must constantly be machazik himself. But what's number four? Number 4 is derech eretz. Rashi explains what that means. Im umanhu lu'umnaso. If you are a merchant, you must constantly be mechazik yourself. If you're a tradesman, you must go out into the marketplace. You must study what's there. You must look out and constantly give yourself chizik and work very, very diligently. Very, very focused. If you're an ish milchama, if you're a warrior, you have to go out into battle with tremendous drive, constantly psych yourself up. This Gemara seems to contradict the first. Why? Because if the amount of money I'm going to make this year is set, whatever that number is, let me go out there and work an hour, 2 hours a day. What do I have to go out there, be mechazik myself, study the marketplace, see what's out there, and constantly give myself that vim, that vigor. Work a little bit, take it slow. Hashem decide on Rosh Hashanah exactly how much money you're going to make, a lot or a little. What difference does it make? Why do you have to constantly be mechazik yourself? Why do you have to constantly reinvigorate yourself? So, at the outset, these two Gemaras seem to be contradictory. And I think when we study exactly this point, what's Hashem's role and what's our role, I think we'll see that these two Gemaras actually are not at all in contradiction. But to do that, let's take apart each of part of that equation. What's Hashem's part? What's Hashem's role in the equation? So let's begin with the following. Sefer Chinuch explains that there is a mitzvah lo sikam, don't take revenge. Now normally you assume that the reason for that mitzvah is because it's humanistic. If you're going to avenge a slight, if you're going to take retribution, you're going to cause strife, you're going to cause war, you're going to cause a lot of trouble. We assume the reason of lo sikam, don't take revenge, is because people will live in peace, life will be better. Whilst that's 100% true, the Sefer Chinuch explains that's not the tam of the mitzvah. He says, don't take revenge. Why? Because you have to understand that that human being cannot touch you. When you're taking revenge, you're imputing powers to that man that he doesn't have. You're pretending as if he can affect you. You're acting as if he brought that harm to you. Don't take revenge, because you have to recognize that Hashem runs the world. Every outcome, every single event is determined by Hashem. Human beings are powerless to affect you. When you take revenge, you're pretending as if that man can harm you. Says the Sefer Chinuch, that is patently false. And the Chovos HaLevavos, when defining bitachon, explains the first understanding I have to have is that no human being can harm me. You can scheme, you can dream, you could wish for my harm, you can't touch me. If that pain was not destined to come to me, there is nothing that you can do to bring it to me. And on the other side, if that pain was to come to me and you decided not to do it, I would have tripped on the way up the stairs, hot soup would have fallen on me. Many, many messengers Hashem has to bring out the outcome. But this understanding that you cannot change my destiny, you can't harm me physically, you can't harm me financially, you cannot affect me in a negative way. And there's a corollary. As you cannot harm me, you can't help me either. You could be the wealthiest fellow in the world. If that money was not destined to come to me, there is no way you could transfer it to me. My uncle could be the head of Sloan Kettering. If my time is up, there is no one and nothing that can affect that. You can't harm me, you can't help me. I walk around with a lucite bubble. When I walk down the streets, I'm contained within this lucite bubble. Hashem is right there protecting me, guiding me throughout my existence. And if you'd like to know how far this concept goes, let me share with you an interesting observation. Did you ever have a teacher tell you how to take a compliment? I remember I was in 3rd grade and I had a teacher who said, don't squirm, don't look away, look the person in the eye, smile and say thank you. Nice life lesson, how to take a compliment. Okay, but did you ever have a teacher tell you how to take an insult? What happens when someone cuts into you? Gratuitously, without cause, just cuts right into you. So Chovos HaLevavos says, when that happens, you're supposed to turn your eyes heavenwards and say the words, thank you Hashem for revealing a little of my many flaws. Because I'm supposed to understand that that human being cannot affect me. You can't harm me physically. You can't steal anything from me. And you cannot embarrass me. If that pain wasn't destined to come, you would not be able to succeed. And if that pain was coming to me, if you weren't the one to deliver it, there would have been many other ways. But I have to understand that you are powerless to change my destiny. A mushal to this would be, imagine for a minute the following. Imagine that I'm speaking here and I get angry at someone and I point the finger and I start calling you names. You're a bleep, and I start calling you every name in the book. And you get insulted. You get so angry that you stand up, walk over to the loudspeaker and punch it right in the subwoofer. Now, had you punched me in the jaw, we could discuss whether that's clever or not. But walking over to the loudspeaker and punching it is foolish. Says the Chovos HaLevavos, when a human being cuts into you, when he insults you, you're supposed to turn your eyes to Shemayim and recognize the fact that this human being is a pawn. He's but the loudspeaker. There's someone above speaking into that microphone. I didn't ask you to be the nudnik to deliver the message, but you are but a kli, but a pawn. I'm supposed to hear those words. And this concept obviously changes our life, changes our interaction with others, changes every relationship. The next time you feel yourself getting angry with your spouse, if you focus on this fact, whether she's right or not, I'm supposed to hear those words. And for the record, she might well be right. And most of the times, if you'd like to know what areas you need to work on, what areas you need to change, just listen. Open your ears. I never knew I had that problem. I mean, she only told me 10,000 times. But understanding that no human being can touch me, no human being can harm me, no human being can help me. Hashem is there with me, Yom and V'layla, walking with me when I get behind the wheel of the car, with me as I walk up the stairs, with me as I get into that elevator all day, every day, is the basics to our emunah system. And that's Hashem's part. So the question is, so what's our part? If Hashem decrees every outcome, how much money I'm to make, how much pain I'm supposed to suffer, what house I'm supposed to buy, what woman I'm supposed to marry, so what's my role? What do I have to do? So to focus on this, let's turn our attention to a little different sugya. Rabbeinu Bachai in Chumash makes a very interesting observation. Every os in the Torah is weighed, measured carefully to teach us tremendous lessons. He says, why then do we need to know the details of the Teva? Hashem is going to save Noach and his family, and then we get into a lengthy, detailed description of the dimensions of the Teva that Noach is to build. Says Rabbeinu Bachai, what do we thousands of years later need to know the length, the width? It doesn't matter. Explains Rabbeinu Bachai that the Torah is teaching us a fundamental yesod. He says, do the math. The Teva was 300 amas long, 50 amas wide, 30 amas tall. Assuming an amma is about 2 feet, 600 feet long, maybe 100 feet wide, he says if you think about all of the animals in creation at the time, there's no way that they possibly could have fit into such a small area. The Bronx Zoo today only has about 4,000 animals, and they're on 265 acres. He says if you took 50 such tevas, you could not possibly contain all the hippopotamuses, the giraffes, the elephants, all of the beasts in creation that had to fit onto that teva. Explains Rabbeinu Bachai, you know why the Torah is teaching us the dimensions? Because it's teaching us a fundamental operating principle. And that is you have to go b'derech hateva. Hashem said to Noah, you can't build a teva large enough to house all of the animals and creations, but you can't also not do anything. You have to do as much as you can. When you've exhausted your resources, when you've gone as far as you can, then you can rely on the nace, but not a moment earlier. This is as much as you can do. This is as much as is expected to you. You're obligated to do this much, and that's it. And says Rabbeinu Bachai that this is an operating principle that you'll see throughout Tanakh. He says, as an example, when Yeshua is bringing the Klal Yisrael into Eretz Yisrael, the Zion, 7 nations were living in fortified cities. They were giants. There was no way, according to the derech hateva, according to the way of nature, we could have won any one of those wars. Yet every single battle was won with miracles of unimaginable proportions. Not a single Jewish soldier died. In one battle, one soldier died, and the question was, where was the chet? So asked Rabbeinu Chai, if so, why did Yeshua gather together the armies? Why did he tell them to don your armor, sharpen your swords, prepare yourself for battle? They knew it was going to be a miracle anyway. They knew, according to the ways of nature, they couldn't win this battle. They knew that they were relying on the miracle. Explains Rabbeinu Chai, because that's our role. We have to go in the derech hateva, in the ways of the world, as much as we can. Only when we've exhausted that can we rely on the nes. And he says this is the operating principle for our entire life. We have to go in the ways of the world, the way Hashem created the world, the way Hashem wants the world to go. And only when we've done as much as we can, then we can rely on the miracle. And if you'd like to see a classic example of this, I'll share with you one more. The Chovos Vavos points out that when Hashem says to Shmuel Hanavi, Hashem says to him, Ma'asti, I've become disgusted with Shaul. I no longer want Shaul to be the Melech. And Hashem sent Shmuel to anoint one of Yishai's children on a mission to pick the next Melech Yisrael. Shmuel turns to Hashem and he says, Eich Elech, how can I go? V'shama Shaul v'hargeni. Shaul is going to hear that I'm going to anoint another king in his stead. He's going to be angry with me and he'll kill me. I can't go. Says HaKadosh Baruch Hu back to Shmuel, Eglas boka tikach biyadecha. Take a small little calf. You'll tell Shaul that you're bringing a carbon. He'll fall for the trick and don't worry about it. Says the Chovos Vavos, wait a minute. This is HaKadosh Baruch Hu speaking to a Novi Hashem. He's telling him to do something, go on a mission. Says the Novi, I can't go, this powerful king is going to kill me. Chovos Vavos says Hashem should have blasted him. Who created man? Who needs some Pela Adam? What right do you have to possibly turn to Hashem and say you're afraid of a boss of Adam? But not only didn't Hashem blast Shmuel, quite the opposite. Hashem said, okay, here's the plan. Take an egel, take a small calf, tell Shaul you're bringing a carbon, and he'll fall for the ruse. Explains the Chovos Vavos, the reason is because Shmuel was acting properly. Even a Novi Hashem, when given a directive, Me'es Hashem, directly from Hashem, is not allowed to enter a Mokam Sakana. It was dangerous. The Derech HaTeva demands being careful. The ways of nature mean you have to be circumspect, you have to be cautious, you have to be careful in what you do. And the reason why Shmuel did not go is because it wasn't proper, and that's exactly why Hashem agreed with him. And the Chovos Vavos echoes the concept Rabbeinu Chai says that we're obligated to go in the Derech HaTeva in everything we do. And these two Gemaras are actually quite consistent. When I'm going out into the marketplace, I have to say to myself as follows, exactly the amount of money I am to make, a fortune or a pittance, tremendous wealth or tremendous aniyas has been decreed by Hashem. And my role is to go out there in the ways of the world. Use this world in the way Hashem set it up. Use the world in the way that Hashem wants it to operate. Go in the ways of nature. Go out and earn a living. If I'm a carpenter, if I'm a merchant, I have to study the marketplace. I have to ask myself, what is the appropriate ishtadlus? According to the ways of nature, what is the way that I should be acting? And when I've defined that, I have to go out into the world with vim, with vigor, with energy, knowing all the while that exactly that which Hashem decreed will happen, not a penny more, not a penny less. And this pshara, this balance, is a very, very difficult one to attain. Because invariably we're erring to one side or the other. Either we say Hashem runs the world and we sit back and do nothing because we trust in Hashem and that's not proper. Or we put so much trust in our hands that we forget that Hashem runs the world. But the proper pshara is to be actively engaged, to be very focused on the Derech HaTeva, knowing all the while that exactly that which Hashem decrees will be. To earn a living, I have to go out there and get a job and work very, very diligently. When I'm sick, I go to a doctor, but not a doctor, not any doctor. I go to the best medical practitioner I can find. And I get a second opinion and a third opinion. And I ask and I dwell and I think. And when I bring in all of the information and I put it together, I reach my conclusion. I believe the right thing for me to do according to the ways of nature is to undergo the operation. And then I take my heavy load and I transfer it to Hashem. I've done my part, I've used the world and the ways of the world, and now I understand that exactly that which you've decreed is to be, and I have tremendous bitachon. But that bitachon is based on my doing my part and understanding that Hashem does His part. And if you'd like a mushal, and I think it needs a mushal because it's not easy to integrate into our daily life, imagine the following. Imagine you're at the theater, and you're watching the last scene of the play. The two stars get into a fight. One punches the other, kicks, they roll on the floor. The curtain comes down. 10 minutes later, you walk into the dressing room, and you see the two guys. One slaps the other on the back. Whoa, what a great punch. Oh, and you're kicked tonight. Wow, I barely missed it. Wow. And you look at, what are you guys doing? 10 minutes ago, you were struggling and wrestling on the floor. Now you're laughing and slapping each other on the back? Of course. Why? It was a choreographed fight scene. It wasn't real. The ducks, the punches, the kicks were all part of the script. That's our hishtadlus. I have to go out there in the world, and when you're looking at me, it has to look real. It's got to look like a very real scene. My hishtadlus has to be in the ways of the world. It's got to look very, very alive. And all the while, I understand that the script has been written, exactly the outcome that Hashem has decreed will be. And this balance is a very, very difficult one to attain. And this balance is one of the focal points of our entire life. And it carries through in almost every endeavor that we're engaged in. Almost every situation and almost every life setting. L'mashal, earning a living. How does one earn a living? So the Chovos HaLevavos explains very clearly. It's not just by saying, I want to make money. And it's not just by saying, this is what I think is good. Explains the Chovos HaLevavos that Hashem gives us a teva. He explains that the chatul, the cat, has an instinct to hunt the mouse. The robin hungers for the worm. The robin doesn't think, based on the nutritional value as well as the general availability, I think I'll hunt worms. It has an instinct, a passion, a nature to hunt the worm. As Hashem gave each animal in the wild kingdom an instinct, aptitude, and ability to earn its living, so too, explains the Chovos HaLevavos, Hashem gives each man the ability, aptitude, and instinct to earn a living. You ever notice that some guys just like to work with their hands? And some people are real numbers people. Some people are very, very good businessmen. I said to my wife when my son was 6 years old, he was already buying and selling, I said, guess what he should be doing for a living? But you see, there's a teva, there's a nature. Hashem gives an instinct to each person, and that's what you're supposed to follow. If you have a nature to go out there and do a particular type of malacha, that's what you're supposed to do, that's what you're supposed to follow. And while that may sound simple, it's not simple at all. A number of years ago, I met a fellow, I was a high school rebbe for many years, and I met one of the fellows a number of years after he graduated high school. He had learned for a while, now he was working. And I asked him how things going. Good, good. What do you do? And he explained to me what he does. And I said, what? This was the guy who always was playing with cars. He was fixing cars and putting them apart, taking them back together. He slept with the Chilton book, you know, that thick parts book under his pillow. I mean, this was the kid loved cars. It was a no-brainer that when he goes to work, he's going to either open a body shop or a repair shop, or cars was natural to him. That wasn't what he was doing. And I said to him, I don't understand. You were so into cars. Why aren't you going to? He said, I would love to. I really would love to, but I'll tell you, thought of coming into shul, on Shabbos with grease under my fingernails. It's not coveted. I wanted a real, prestigious kind of job, so I worked in an office. And I said to myself, that's exactly what the Chovos HaLevavos is talking about. If you're going to ignore your inner nature because you want to make more money, because you want more covered, you will fail. You won't make a penny more, and more than that, you will be miserable. Because Hashem gives you an instinct, gives you a teva to earn your living. You're supposed to use that instinct, study the marketplace, and ask yourself, how can I best utilize these skills? That doesn't mean you have to be a mechanic fixing under the hood. It could be that you should open a shop with 20,000 other people working for you. But using that nature, using that teva, using the instinct that you have, and pursuing that and following that is the right hishtadlus. And explains the Chovos HaLevavos that you have to know that exactly that which you're going to make has been set. Follow your instinct. Go out with it. If it's bitter, if it's sweet, you have to say to yourself, this is what Hashem wants. And you have to go out there and do your shtadlus in the way that Hashem wants. And while it may be somewhat obvious when it comes to things like earning a living, it should be far more obvious in another area, and yet it doesn't seem to be. If you'd like to know what is the right hishtadlus when it comes to shidduchim, there are two stages, two parts to it. There's what I call a paper test, and there's a Bashert test. The paper test is very simple. You take these two young people, and you ask, on paper, are they holding in the same place? Are they looking for the same sort of things? If he's looking to learn for the next 10 years, and she only shops in Saks Fifth Avenue, we have a problem. But assuming that they're holding in the same place, they're looking to raise a family with the same sort of values, they're looking for the same things in life, and assuming that there are no skeletons in the closet, no grave psychological issues, and etc., they've passed the paper test, and then you take the Bashert test. And this is the strangest part. The Bashert test is very, very simple, and it's amazing why no one gets it. The Bashert test is you go out, and you see if it sort of works. There's a sort of commonality. It just sort of feels right. The dates go well. It sort of feels comfortable. It just feels right. Not mad passion, not fireworks on the 4th of July. It's enjoyable. It seems to flow. The time goes quickly. I look forward to the dates. And that's the Bashert test. If on paper they match up, and then they pass the Bashert test, that is the sign that that's the right one. Rav Wolbe writes in his Svarim that people always ask about the Baskol. 40 days before a person's born, Baskol Yatzatz V'Omeres, Baskol comes out and says, Bito Shaploni Leploni, the daughter of so-and-so is to marry so-and-so. What good's the Baskol? I don't hear it. I don't hear the Baskol, so what good is it that it's been decreed that this is the right person? Explains Rav Wolbe in the name of the Chazon Ish that when you go out with a person and it feels right, it just seems to be the right thing and it just seems to sort of click, that's the Baskol. Hashem is imprinted within your heart a certain affinity, a certain predestined falling for that person. You take the paper test, you take the Bashert test, and if he or she passes, that's the right one. And that sounds obvious, and usually when I say this, everyone goes, right, of course. That's what everybody does, right? Wrong. I don't know anyone who does that. I know everyone who does the exact opposite. They come with their laundry list. This is what I need. And it's a long, detailed list. I need this, I need this, I need this, I need this. And if I don't have it, I just can't be happy. And if you manage to somehow arm twist them into going out after the first date or the second or the third, I'm dropping her. Why? And you get the lists. And I'll ask, granted I speak to the young men more than the young women, but I speak to enough of both sides to share with you a very common experience. Did you enjoy the dates? Absolutely. Were you having a good time? Absolutely. Do you look forward to seeing her again? Absolutely. So, why do you want to stop? Well, she's not what I'm looking for. Do you mind sharing with me what you mean? And I'm going to share with you an exact Maisa Shahaya. I'm not making this up, not inventing it. I asked the young man exactly those questions. After 4 dates, how's it going? Good. Do you enjoy it? Good. You look forward to it? Yep. Enjoy a company? Yep. Attracted to her? Yep. Absolutely. But I've decided to drop her. Why? Well, I gave her a psychological test and she failed. Now, I was very impressed. I would like to see how a 24-year-old man, first of all, he doesn't have a psychology degree to my knowledge, certainly not a doctorate, but I would rightly like to know exactly what this psychological test was. Maybe I could use it. I asked him, what do you mean? So he said, well, I asked her, if she could be an animal, which animal would she choose? And she said, a horse. Now, everyone knows a horse is masculine. I don't want a woman who wants to be masculine, so I dropped her. You're joking, right? He wasn't joking. And if it weren't for the fact that someone grabbed him by the shirt collars and shook some sense into him, he would have made a major life mistake. Baruch Hashem, he didn't. He married that woman. They're married for many years now. Baruch Hashem, a nice, beautiful family. But when you hear this stuff time after time, I'm not continuing, I'm not going out because, and the lists come out. The lists are detailed and exact. Very, very exact. If I had $1 for every time I get the call, I want to drop. A guy called me, Rebbe, you got to help me. What's the matter? I'm read to shidduch, and I think I'm going to fall for her. So what's the problem? Well, that's the problem. And he goes on to describe what he needs to be happy. Would you like to know why so many people, I'm not saying everyone, and I'm not saying this is the answer to the shidduch crisis, but would you like to know why many people have difficulty finding their Bashert? They have difficulty finding their Bashert because they're not looking for him. You know the children's toy, Mr. Potato Head? You know, you get to choose the ears and the eyes and the nose and the big lips of the blue nose. Most people I know, when they're going out, they're not looking for their Bashert. They make their Mr. Potato Head. Let me see. Based on my personality, based on my temperament, I need this. And they put together their image of the perfect chassan. With that image firmly in place, they go out into the marketplace and try to find the one that comes closest to their Mr. Potato Head. Well, guess what? They're not finding their Bashert because they're not looking for him. They're looking for their preconceived notion, their pre-made up version of what they need to be happy. And I'd like to share with you, they don't have a clue. How many people have the audacity to say, I fundamentally understand marriage? My wife and I recently celebrated our 25th wedding anniversary. And the only reason that I have the audacity to counsel couples is because Baruch Hashem, I had a Masorah from my Rebbe, the Rishiva Zatzal, who taught us, who trained us. And it wasn't until 20 years into the marriage that I ever had the audacity to actually think I understood it. And even now I recognize there are many, many marriages that I don't understand. But here's the challenge. Imagine that you're 20 years old. And imagine that you're put into the following circumstance. You have to know yourself. You have to know exactly what your nature is. You have to know exactly how you'll handle different life situations, whether it be stress, whether it be success. You have to then understand what it is that you need. You then have to go into the opposite gender to find the match that will exactly complement your strengths, fill in your weaknesses. And then you have to fundamentally understand what a marriage is about so that you can actually find the match that's appropriate. Then amongst about 10,000 or so eligible people, you have to pick out that needle from the haystack. What do you think the odds of your succeeding are? I'd like to share with you very, very slim. Very, very unlikely. But it's more than that. It's not the right ishtadlus. You're not making your bashert. Hashem is the one who decrees, Bito shel ploni leploni. Hashem set that before you were born. Your job is to go out there and find that person. Well, how do you do that? There are two parts to the ishtadlus. Number one, you take the paper test. On paper, are they looking for the same things in life? Are they headed in the same direction? And number two, you take the Bashert test, but the Bashert test isn't, is she pretty enough? Is he handsome enough? Is he smart enough? Does he have enough money? Is he what I'm looking for and what I need? The Bashert test is intuitive and instinctive. You go out and you see if it works. Is there a commonality? Does it feel natural? Does it feel right? Does it just sort of work? Do the conversations flow? Do you look forward to the dates? And that's the Bashert test. And as obvious as this sounds, I'd like to share with you that it's very rare that I actually find anyone doing this. Ask, if you don't think I'm right, ask a 20-year-old. Ask a 20-year-old young woman, 23-year-old young man, what are you looking for? And out comes the lists. I know one person who I asked them, what are you looking for? And she said, my Bashert. I said, what? My Bashert? Well, what do you mean? I don't know exactly. I don't know what I'm looking for my Bashert. I said, what? But that's the only right answer. Now, if you're read many, many people, and you have to choose between 10, do you have a right to say, I think this one is more suited? Do I think it's more likely that this is the match? Absolutely. But that's not a criteria for judgment. It's a criteria for selecting one of 10. But when you're on a date, what you're looking for is, does it work? Is it natural? Does it pass the Bashert test? And I believe that many people make this mistake with a sort of understanding, well, it doesn't matter because at the end of the day, if it's Bashert, it's Bashert, right? Hashem runs the world. Hashem decrees who's going to be with who. So what does it matter? My laundry list, not the laundry list, Mr. Potato Head, it doesn't matter, right? I'd like to share with you that I don't believe that's correct at all. Let me give you a mashal. Imagine it's Rosh Hashanah. Not that far off from now. Imagine it's Rosh Hashanah. I'm standing in shul, davening, tallis over my head, shuckling away, mamish absorbed. All of a sudden I hear a bas call. Schaefer, oh, I've been sent from Shemaim. Yeah, what? I've been sent to tell you this year you'll make $1 million. Whoa, $1 million bucks. Wow, this is great. After a shana, walk out of shul, happy as a lark, quit my day job, don't even concern myself with earning a parnasa. I heard the bas call. I do no hishtadlus whatsoever that year. What do you think is going to happen? I'd like to share with you, most likely what will happen is that I'll go hungry that year. Because when Hashem decrees that you will make $1 million this year, there's a proviso, there's a tanai, amanas, that you do what you're supposed to do. To earn a living, you get a job. To find your bashert, you go out. There's a derech hateva, and your job is to go out in the ways of the world and use this world as you're supposed to. If a young man wakes up at a certain point and says, forget it, this whole shadchan, it's just too much, I'm not getting married. I'd like to share with you, most likely he won't get married. Because you see, Hashem doesn't hand shackle a person to a result. Bashert doesn't mean Hashem handcuffs you to a certain sequence of events in your life. Bashert means Hashem makes it accessible and available for you to take. If it's Bashert for you to make X amount of money, it's there. Go out there, reach, strive for it, and that's what you'll get. Not a penny more, not a penny less. But if you don't do your hishtadlus, guess what? All bets are off. Could you possibly get the money anyway? Sometimes, for various reasons, Hashem decides that for you, your children, whatever the chedj may be, but most likely you'll fail. And if a person decides he's not getting married, also most likely won't succeed. And if a person decides that I'm dropping this person for this reason or that reason or that, whatever it may be, they can pass by their bashert and walk away. When I was a bocher, I heard this story told over many times. A young man came to the stipler and said, when am I going to finally find her? He was 25 already. When am I going to find my bashert? And the story was told, the stipler looked up and said, find your bashert? You already passed her by when you were looking for the best girl in the world. And if you decide that me, Bislamachar over here, and I deserve nothing but the best, and this one's not good enough, and this one's not good enough, and not this one, and not this one, guess what? It's biyodcha, it is within your capacity to pass by your bashert. You could be read to her, you could even fall for her, and you could say, not good enough for me, I don't want it, and you could walk away. And sometimes, and unfortunately not that rare, you'll hear round 1 and round 2. Sometimes even round 3. My wife has a friend, they went out many dates. He couldn't decide, she couldn't decide. They dropped it. And it wasn't until 7 years later that they went out again. And guess what? They got married, Baruch Hashem, very happily. And it's not that rare. I had a fellow once who said, Rebbe, we have to talk. I said, what's doing? I'm going out with this young woman, and I'm not sure what to do. I on the one hand, she has this mila and this mila. On the other hand, this asar. I just can't figure out what to do. But here was a problem that I had. This was round 2. You see, he had gone out with this young woman a few years back, and it was one of those long, protracted situations. He couldn't decide back then. Now we're in round 2, and he has the same sveikas. On the one hand, she's this. On the other hand, she's this. I just can't decide. So I turned to this young man. I said, here's the problem. The question is, it could be that she's not the right person for you. It could be what's stopping you is you just don't feel the natural sense of comfort, of attraction, because she's not the right one. On the other hand, it could be that she is the right one, but you're blocking it for certain reasons, certain expectations. But the problem is it's very difficult to know. What we need is Eliyahu Hanavi. If Eliyahu Hanavi was here, he would say she's the right one or the wrong one. But we need Eliyahu Hanavi to tell us whether Hashem wants this one for you. At which point this young man says in a quiet voice, she is the right one for me, but I'm angry at Hashem for that. I said, stop, what did you say? Say those words again. And he repeated those words again. She is the right one for me, but I'm angry at Hashem for it. Do you hear what he was saying? Hashem determined that this was the right one for him. Hashem brought him to her and her to him, and he knows better than HaKadosh Baruch Hu what he needs to be happy, what he needs to be successful, what he needs for his marriage to work. And if you think he's insane or delusional, it's so common that it's frightening. What do you want me to settle? You want me to just settle? Yes, settle for that which Hashem has decreed for you. Well, how do I know? Follow the system. When you're earning a living, you follow your heart. There's an instinct, there's a teva. This is what I enjoy, this is natural to me. Hashem gave me these instincts, these abilities, and that's what I'm supposed to do. And when you're going out, there's a teva. Also, there's a nature. That's the baskol, but you have to listen to it. And if you don't listen to it, I don't know. Sometimes, despite your best efforts, Hashem could arrange it that you get married. And by the way, I'd like to share with you, if you'd like to see Nisim Gluyim in our generation, the fact that there are still marriages, the fact there's still weddings, I hold one of the biggest Nisim you can imagine. That young people still get married, mamash and nes, because they do everything, and the mother-in-laws, I hate to tell you, the mothers of both are worse. They do everything to sabotage the success of a young couple getting married. So, I think we have a little bit of a problem. I think there's a little bit of an approach that's skewed. And no one does it maliciously, and no one does it for bad cause. But there's a sense of, listen, for my tzadskala, nothing but the best. After all, he has learned for 2 years in base medrash. Ground he's bottling, but nothing but the best girl in Brooklyn for him. And my daughter, you're kidding? With such yichus and such mishpacha, should she settle for? And when people come up with the lists and come up with the requirements and come up with what I need and what I have to have, and if the mothers don't create the expectations, and either the guy does or the woman does, and it's a bitter, bitter battle, and I'm telling you, I deal with it on a almost daily basis when I hear the war stories. And I hate to admit this publicly, but I have a text on my phone from a young woman who called me up in desperation. What do? I like him, I don't, I do, I don't. So I spent an hour. I spent an hour with her. And it was so clear, hashkafically, they were right on the same page. They were looking for exactly the same thing in life. And more than that, they liked each other in a very real way. The dates worked, it flowed, the conversations, everything was perfect. She had certain little things that she was exaggerating, and I explained to her that it's really not a big deal. 5 years down the line, you won't even notice them. I doubt you'll even be aware of them probably 2 years after the marriage. And she agreed to continue. Good, very nice. I get a text on the way into the shir. This is not a guzma. You can look on the time on the text. It says, Rabbi Schaefer, I want to thank you very much for your time. I just want you to know we continue going out, but I decided he's not for me. I continue reading. It's true that we really like each other, but I think that's the problem. We really like each other in our hearts, but in our heads, it's the wrong thing. What? What do you mean? We went through the checklist. Everything you're looking for in life, he's looking for. Everything he's looking for, you're on the same page. I couldn't have written it better. She has certain understandings. We have different dating styles. We have different ways. And we're not made for each other. Hashem Yirachem. And guess what? You are quite capable of passing by your Bashert. When Hashem gave us Bechira, Hashem gave us the ability to shape our destiny. I could be a tzaddik. I could be a rasha. I could do my hishtadlus properly. I can fail. It's biyodcha. You don't have to get married. You don't have to have children. You don't have to succeed. You can fail. That's part of Bechira. Hishtadlus is intuitive, it's instinctive, and I think Chazal is sharing with us, it is a battle. The battle is to use this world in the ways of the world. And what that means is to go out there with vim, with vigor, with energy. When you're earning a living, it's dalad dvarim srich and chizuk. You have to be machazik yourself. You have to get up in the morning and say, let's go. You have to study the marketplace and ask yourself, what do I have to do? You have to almost, if you be take Hashem out of the picture, ask yourself according to the derech hateva, this is my skill sets. This is the marketplace. I have 6 kids, I have mortgage, I have yeshiva tuitions. What is the right hishtadlus? What is the right effort I have to put in? You do as much as you can. If the only way you're going to succeed is by violating a Torah principle, whether it be cheating or stealing, obviously that's not hishtadlus. You know, if a financial analyst comes over to you and says, you got a problem, young man, you're in a retail trade, and you're not going to open your shop on the Saturday, you're going to fail. The derech hateva doesn't ask you to violate a Torah principle. You're supposed to do as much as you can within the Gidrei HaTorah. Guided by Torah demands, it means I have to be a mensch, I have to daven, I have to learn, I have to be a family person, I have to be oriented to my kids, and the time remaining has to be focused and driven. What should I do? How much energy can I put in? You have to look out at the marketplace and give yourself chizik and go out there and work very, very diligently, because that's the derech hateva. And then you have to say to yourself, exactly what I'm supposed to make is determined by Hashem, not a penny more, not a penny less. That's the balance. like that choreographed fight scene. You have to go through the motions, and it has to look real to anyone from the outside. At the same time, you have to know exactly what Hashem has decreed will be. No more pain, no more success, no more failure than exactly what Hashem has for us. When a human being cuts into you, whether they try to cut you off on the highway, whether they insult you, you have to recognize they are powerless to affect your destiny. You can't harm me, you can't help me. I walk around with that lucite bubble, impenetrable. Hashem is with me, Yom and Valayla, 24/7, 365, guarding me, protecting me. You can't harm me, and as you can't harm me, you can't help me. You can't steal my customer base. You can't finagle my clients away. You are powerless. Do I have to be wise? Do I have to be diligent? Oh yeah. I have to be out there with tremendous focus and tremendous energy doing my part. But like Noah building the Teva, there's a limit. I can only go so far. I'm only obligated to go so far. That's what I do. And then I know that exactly what Hashem decrees is what I'm supposed to have. It applies to every area in life. It applies to earning a living, and certainly applies to finding a Bashert. I'd like to close with a story. And it's a story that I find very eye-opening and actually very interesting, because the story only unfolded after a while. I was at a Shiva house. I was actually visiting the young man who wasn't such a young man. He was probably in his 40s. He was sitting Shiva and his mother. His mother was 72. And interestingly enough, he was born in Iran. And as I was sitting there, some of the story of their life came out. His father passed away when he was 93 years old. His father spent most of his life in Iran, had been a very successful businessman. As a matter of fact, he bought and sold many, many businesses, probably as many as 50 businesses. Not everyone did phenomenally well, but over the course of years, he's prospered and he did very well. And interestingly enough, he was very, very involved in his business up until his last years. As a matter of fact, when he was 87, his kids joined in a more official manner, but he still ran the business. When he was 90, he was going to work every day. 91, he slowed down a little bit 3 times a week. Until almost his dying day, he was active in the business. Okay. At a certain point, the young man mentioned that his father couldn't get married. His father was in Iran, looking for his Bashert. 25, couldn't find her. 28, 30, 40, 45. Wasn't until he was 45 years old that he met his Bashert, the woman who was sitting Shiva. They got married, and all these years, they lived happily after. And now I'd like to share with you the lesson that I only understood after the events. Could you imagine what it's like for a young man in Iran, turns to Hashem and says, Hashem, I'm trying. It's so difficult. I'm trying to find my Bashert, trying to find the right one to raise a Jewish family, and it's not coming. Hashem, what's the problem? And then he turns a few years later, he's 25. Hashem, please. Let's go. 30. Hashem, please. 35. Hashem, what's this? I'm trying. I'm doing. I want to do what you want. Hashem, why are you making it so difficult? 40. He's getting it. Till he's 45. And you can imagine that this young man, and as he grew older, middle-aged person, had questions. And we'll never know the answers, at least not while we're in this world. But let's imagine for a minute that we were allowed to go up to Shemayim. And while this may not be exactly what happened, let's imagine that we get to go up to Shemayim and we get to hear the story. We get to hear Hashem listening to the tefillah and Hashem saying, Kaviyachol, don't you understand? You're going to live a long, prosperous life. What's going to happen if you're 25 now and I find you a woman about your age? When you turn 65, she's going to slow down. By the time she's 70, you're going to be running around, business, running here or there. She's going to be an old woman. By the time she's 75, she'll be in a wheelchair. By the time you're 80, she'll be gone. The hardest years of your life, the last 13 years of your life, you'll be alone. You're a young man now. I know it's hard to be alone, but it's much harder when you're older. Don't you understand? The one who's decreed for you, the one who's best for you, isn't ready for you because she's in diapers. Because when he was 25 years old, she was maybe 4. But he didn't understand that. And certainly when he's being mevakesh rachamim, he didn't recognize that. And it's only when you're way, way out of the thick and the thin, the heavy traffic of life, that you begin to understand the picture. When a Jew goes into the marketplace, when a Jew goes into, be involved in shidduchim, when a Jew engages in any activity, there has to be a certain humility that I don't know. I take my heavy load and I transfer to Hashem. I rely on the fact that Hashem is concerned for me. I rely on the fact that Hashem wants my betterment. As the Chovos HaLevavos says, I know that Hashem loves me more than I love me. That Hashem is concerned for my good. Hashem is concerned for my welfare far greater than I am. And that part's not so hard. It's a second part that's very difficult. The understanding that Hashem knows better than I what it is that I need. Hashem knows what I need. Hashem knows what's best for me. And Hashem has a much better understanding of what's in my best interest than I do. And I believe that this is a big cause of many of our troubles. I believe that 80% of our emunah problems, 80% of our philosophical dilemmas stem from this one mistake. That mistake is that we play God. I'll explain to you what playing God means. And playing God means as follows. I've decided that I need this job. I need to marry this woman. I need my child to get into this class. And I made it clear to Hashem. I explained it to Hashem. I even davened. I even broke a deal. Hashem, if you'll let me do this, I'll learn another daf yomi. I'll add another shir, another seder. I explained to Hashem. I made it clear. And Hashem's not playing along. I don't get it. Hashem, what's the story? You're angry with me? You have time? Hashem, what's the deal? And how many times do you hear the story? The guy had to marry that woman, and 2 years later he finds out that the word mentally unstable is an understatement. I had to get that job. And then 5 years later he finds the entire industry has been shipped over to China. I had to get my kid into that class. And 6 months later he finds out that there was another child in that class who was the worst possible influence in the world for his child. Playing God means pretending as if I know, but I don't. I'm a Bashert Adam. I see about 2 inches in front of my eye. My job is to go out there, use the world in the ways of the world. I'm supposed to be wise. I'm supposed to be prudent. I'm supposed to ask myself, what does Hashem want me to do in this situation? And then after I've put in my full effort, I take my heavy load and I transfer it to Hashem. I say, Hashem, you know better. I've knocked on this door. I've knocked on that door. I've put in a gargantuan effort. I've done my part. Now exactly that which you feel is best will come about. And with that sense, there's a ease, there's a menuchas hanefesh, there's real bitachon. It applies to earning a living, it applies to shtadlus, it applies to everything in life. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu grant us the wisdom and ability to put that into practice. I just want to mention again the book that was mentioned before. It's called the Shmuz on Bitachon, Finding and Keeping Your Soulmate. It recently has come out. It's distributed by Feldheim. You can pick it up in the Svarim stores. If you don't go on the internet. If you do go on the internet, go to the shmuz.com, THESHMUZ.com. And you could either listen to all the shmuzim. This was a shmuz. You could download and podcast them or purchase this book. But again, it is available in all the Svarim stores. Much asacha. Sorry? It's available here. Oh yeah, it's available here in the back. Also, the copies are $10. You can just leave the money in the back and take a copy with you. There are also tape sets that are available for the same price.
Shekayach, Shem, Irgen Shirter, Mrs. Boston, and to be big Shekayach to Sheva for the inspiring drosha. I'd like to thank the sponsor of tonight's shir, Beilam Shem, Leil Nishmas Reb Chaim, Ezriel Ben Yochanan, and all of us Shalom, Tenishmos Eitzur B'Tzara Chaim. I'd like to remind Olam that whoever didn't participate in the annual dinner last night, that helps Irgen Shirter be mechazik yourselves and the communities with Torah Shiurim throughout the year. Please, you can still participate and help us continue with our vital Habatzis Torah work. There's still a few shiurim remaining, can be sponsored and have a chelik in Habatzis Torah over here in the community. As Rosh Hashiva mentioned, don't forget to check out his sefer. It's available at the table near the door, and the CDs and tapes, the shiurim as well. Shekach everyone for coming. CDs of tonight's show will be available shortly. B'chananya ben HaKash Shemer, Rotzak HaKadosh Baruch Hu, L'Zakes Es Yisrael, the figure Hibram Torah Mitzvah Shenem Adonai Chofes Amantzit Kli Yagdul Torah V'Yadeh.